Welcome to the conversation at airsafe.com. I'm your host, Dr. Todd Curtis. On October 25, 2016, the British government gave initial approval for a third runway at London's Heathrow Airport. Currently, Heathrow is one of the top airports in the world with respect to the number of passengers that go through the airport. Later that day, I spoke with BBC about some of the ramifications of this decision and some of the hurdles that may have to be overcome before the third runway is put into operation.
Now to the British government's approval of the controversial expansion of Heathrow Airport in London, Europe's busiest air hub. We can speak to aviation industry expert Dr. Todd Curtis in Boston, I think. Well, do you think, first of all, that expanding Heathrow is the right decision? And given the level of opposition around the airport at the moment, and even in the ruling Conservative Party, do you think it will ever happen?
Well, to the first question, whether it's a right or wrong decision will be up to the British people, because ultimately they're the ones who will have to live with the consequences. But as far as the long-term effects of having a third runway, I think from an economic perspective as well as a flexibility perspective, this would be a good outcome if it were to come to pass. Whether it will come to pass will depend on, obviously, years of consultations with all the affected communities.
Questions aren't there whether the UK can possibly meet its climate change obligations if it expands Heathrow. And you will know the answer to this. Isn't there a trend among those who build and buy commercial airliners for smaller planes, much more fuel efficient, carrying fewer people, less need perhaps for big hub airports?
Well, the need for smaller airplanes often follows the availability of landing slots. For example, Heathrow is one of the top airports in the world with respect to the numbers of people who fly through there. But that's because the average passenger load is much higher than at other large airports around the world. Now, if there were an opportunity for more planes to go in and out, there will be an economic incentive to have smaller aircraft.
BBC was hearing today from lorry drivers who were saying actually for years it's been very, very difficult to get into Heathrow at the moment. It's going to mean a massive infrastructure expansion on the ground, apart from anything else, isn't it?
Well, it depends. If the increase in traffic is largely people transferring from one aircraft to another, that is not origin and destination traffic, the level of infrastructure that would be necessary would be far different than if it were more people from the surrounding communities, from that part of Britain, who are actually using the expanded runway.
But a lot of cargo is carried on passenger jets, isn't it? That's an issue.
It's an issue. It's also a huge profit center for the airlines. And as you have more aircraft flying in and out of an airport, the amount of cargo that goes through will obviously go up. But it also follows that cargo tends to follow the larger aircraft. So if you have an influx of smaller aircraft, it's unclear to me whether or not that will mean an increase in cargo going through there as well.
What's your best bet? Do you think Heathrow will expand?
I'm betting that it will expand, but I'm also betting that the timetable that's been laid out, at least initially, is somewhat optimistic. Not even breaking ground for the runway until perhaps 2020. And there may be many environmental, not to mention political, hurdles that have to be overcome before that would happen.
And is it inevitable then that other UK airports will expand, or do you think actually that removes the need for that?
Well, it's inevitable that there will be changes in the airline industry. Whether that means a shift away from large passenger jets towards small, whether it means a shift towards an entirely different kind of transportation, it's hard to say. Again, we're talking about something that may take 10 to 15 years to come to fruition. In that time, there could be massive changes in the airline industry that can not yet be anticipated.
Sounds like we could be talking to you again. Dr. Todd Curtis, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. For more about airline safety and security, please visit airsafe.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.